Welcome to Unit 11 of EDSE 512. In the course schedule, you'll see that Unit 11 is a one-week unit with a focus on the implementation of the IEP. So we've spent much of this course focusing on the development of the IEP and how to create not only a compliant but also a high-quality IEP that is comprehensive and based upon the student's needs. Again, needs drive goals, drive services. Now we're really talking about how to make that IEP work, how to check in, see how a student is doing on goals, make sure that we are on track, adjust as needed, and ultimately see student success across areas with that targeted and individualized educational program. So for Unit 11, a one-week unit, our focus will be on our final graded assignment other than a discussion, and that final assignment will be Part 4 of the case study, and it is called the Case Study Part 4 Intervention Plan. There is a video provided to you on the assignment page where the description of the case study Part 4 assignment can be located, and you'll see that there's a YouTube video link there. So you'll be able to access that there, and we'll cover it a bit in this lecture as well. For Unit 11, you'll notice that there are many different resources and pieces of information included for you to review. Here is an optional article for you. And there are also several links included here on the graphic organizer page as we introduce the unit under modules. The article can be downloaded in PDF format. So it'll be valuable for you to review all of that as you get started. The first resource here is an IRIS module. You're familiar with those, and this is about supporting students in becoming independent learners. So a lot of this is related to some of those social emotional learning competencies that you might have examined in your practice or perhaps in other courses as well. We're thinking a lot about assessing ourselves, monitoring ourselves, and part of this also would connect with self-regulation and all these concepts related to self-determination and the skills that will be necessary not only in the school setting, but high school and beyond, post-secondary employment, education, or training settings for students and independent living in general. So this is a module that you can do at your own pace. We also have a module for using learning strategies to enhance student learning, and this would be a particular model that this will focus on, the self-regulated strategy development module. So this does build upon the content that was reviewed in the previous IRIS module linked on the page before that one. Here's a section also regarding specially designed instruction. Specially designed instruction really is the academic foundation of special education. So when we are developing our plans for teaching academic content, we want to make sure that we're really examining student needs and developing a universal design for learning based approach, something that will be meaningful to the student with all considerations of any barriers that might be impacting that student in mind. So this specially designed instruction is related to the plans that we have in place for accommodations. It is related to the strategies that we're using and the flexibility that is necessary for assessing content knowledge, for communicating that content, and allowing students to present their learning. You'll see some resources here along with some visuals. So there is information regarding specially designed instruction and high-yield instructional strategies. Here is a visual as well regarding specially designed instruction, which is often referred to in the field as SDI. And you'll see a clear definition here of what this is and what this is not. So, specially designed instruction, or SDI, is all about what we as educators are doing, and it is unique instruction that will be integrated in the IEP. This is not a schedule or a particular classroom or setting. This is not an excuse to remove rigor, but instead, this is SDI, an opportunity for students to really access that general education curriculum to the fullest extent possible by using creative and targeted strategies and means for instructing and supporting those students. There is a continuum here, the least restrictive to the most restrictive environment. So you're familiar with various placement settings that can occur. There's general education classroom setting. You might see a team taught setting. where general education and special education teachers are both providing instruction at the same time. You might see strategies type classes that are taught by special education teachers for students who are requiring that targeted support in a particular academic area. Or you might even see students who are in a center-based type program that is more self-contained, or even in a separate school, depending on identification of the least restrictive environment for that student based on the IEP, as we've talked through in this course. Obviously, this is a continuum. A student might move on this continuum depending upon levels of functioning and growth and other variables that might impact that student over time. So we do need to be fluid and flexible when considering how we can use specially designed instruction, or SDI, in each of those settings. There is information here regarding adaptations, and again, there's a review for accommodations versus modifications, as we're familiar with, and we've gone over this in the course working on these IEP sections. Accommodations would be adjustments to how we're presenting the information, and perhaps adjustments to what type of production or demonstration of knowledge students are providing. So for instance, oral presentation of a test, that would be an accommodation, or if the student has the opportunity to give that learning in a different way. Perhaps it might be verbal instead of written if writing is not what we're evaluating and we're evaluating for content knowledge. So changes in the way that we're presenting or in the way that the student is demonstrating the learning, and modifications would be changes to the instruction itself. So different standards that we're working on, and this is generally provided for students with significant support needs depending upon their programming. There are some other resources linked for you on these pages. You'll see that this is a specially designed lesson plan web page, and here's an example of a lesson plan template. This might be similar to something that you've worked on before, but you can review it and think about how you could really get that fine-tuned instruction in place. Think about the student in your case study, or students that you've worked with in the past or the future or in the present. Who do you have kind of on the docket to serve and support? And there could be a particular grade level or population that you're planning on working with in the future, or that you're working with now. So you can think about how that lesson plan template could be adjusted, and perhaps moving things around or adding or reducing certain categories in that template to make it most effective for that specially designed instruction. There is a visual here as well with a chart with instructional opportunities that can be connected to measurable IEP goals, and you'll see those referenced here as an MAG, and then obviously we're reviewing post-secondary transition goals as appropriate. So you can list off the class setting, the instructional opportunity that will be occurring, and what supports will be necessary, and this is just a useful planning document for you going into that teaching setting. Again, if you're being provided a resource, you can always adjust that based on what's most appropriate. For instance, if post-secondary goals are not relevant for the work that you're doing, that would be something that you could be removing until that student reaches that age. Implementing specially designed instruction, there's a visual for you here. It looks like a little math equation. We have to consider the impact of the student's disability based on the results of the most recent comprehensive evaluation, and then also consider, on the other hand, the expectations of the general education curriculum, and figure out how we can bridge any gap that's there. So how will we support student access to the general education curriculum to the maximum extent possible based on the least restrictive environment? How will we provide that free and appropriate public education? And appropriate, obviously, is the main emphasis there, making sure that we're meeting the students' needs and that we are scaffolding and providing that targeted, specially designed instruction and support. There's a visual here for you too. How does the student's disability impact access and progress in the general education curriculum? So you'll review here content, methodology, and delivery. Again, we've talked about different things that we could adjust in our presentation. You might notice different interventions that are listed here. What kinds of processes are we using to present the information in the first place? That would be methodology consideration. And then below you'll see information regarding questions that we can ask ourselves as we're developing adaptations. We're considering accommodations or even modifications depending upon the student situation. You'll see examples here with these filled out, so it'll tell you about the student, and these are just case study examples, the methodology that is research-based, and then how we will plan to deliver the instruction and what might be beneficial for the student. So do go through these scenarios. They'll give you some support in determining what adaptations might be helpful depending upon the identified disability and the impact of that disability on the student. And remember, that should be really clearly demonstrated and detailed in the student needs and impact of disability statement in the IEP. There's a document for you here that is called the Accessibility Manual. So you can go ahead and download that in Microsoft Word document format for information regarding accessibility and some other specific strategies and suggestions. And this brings us to the case study part 4, intervention plan. There is a video link here you can review for instruction. However, we'll go over this a bit here too. So there are 3 documents provided to you. They're down below. The lesson plan, you'll notice the matrix, and then there are some examples here as well. So this will walk you through what you'll be doing. These numbers 1, 2, and 3 are most important. You just want to make sure that you look over the rubric and the assignment prompt very carefully. You'll first be developing an intervention plan using the intervention plan matrix, and you'll be listing the strategies that you will use to address the IEP goals. This is for the student that you selected for the case study, and this will be built upon the IEP that you developed for part 3. You then will be designing 2 different lesson plans, one for each of the IEP goals that you developed for part 3. So remember, one of these lesson plans will be based upon a goal that you used in that part 3, and then the other will be based upon a different goal. But the difference would be that at least one must be an adaptation of a general education lesson. And you can use this from the setting that you're working in if that's accessible to you, or you can get online and see what kinds of general education lesson plans you might be able to identify that will target the goal on which your student is working. So refer back to your case study part 3 submission and any feedback that you receive on that as you're working through this assignment. The other one would be in a one-on-one setting or in a small group setting, and this could be taught either in general education or perhaps one-on-one outside of general education in a special education classroom or office. So you'll use the lesson plan template that is provided to you, and that's this first one, the lesson plan form. So obviously, if we're working with general education content, we'll need to adapt and use some of those strategies mentioned for specially designed instruction previously in this video and in the module to develop that lesson so that it meets the needs of the student and really hones in on that targeted goal work. And then if we're doing the other lesson plan, we need to start with the goal and then design the lesson around that goal. So we really want to include many different types of practice opportunities and formal and informal assessment opportunities for working on that goal that you've selected. So think about the goals that you've worked on and which one would be most appropriate for one of these versus the other, for the general ed versus the small group or the one-on-one work. And then just specify which goal you're using for each and which setting you'll be doing it in as you build those 2 different lesson plans. Obviously, you'll be using those goals to develop the learning objectives for these lesson plans, and you'll be making your connections to academic standards. You're familiar with these from the previous work that we've done. Put in accommodation information, and this will come from what you've developed in case study part 3 as well. And then ultimately, you will write the lesson using those evidence-based strategies. And we've worked through a lot of those in this course. You will need to cite your sources, and that'll be in APA format. And then finally, in this assignment, you'll be submitting a 1 to 2 page rationale document. We need at least 3 different references in APA format just to explain why did you choose what you choose or what you chose in this lesson plan, and why did you integrate those specific strategies? How do they connect to the IEP goal and to the student's needs and the impact of the student's disability? So this is an awesome opportunity. This is really a chance for our work to come alive in this course. It's kind of the culmination of all of the case study work, and you will want to build this off of the document that you created for case study part 3. So you'll see below some more detail regarding how you will submit this. You'll do your matrix, plan 1, plan 2, and then your written rationale. And there is an example of color coding that might be helpful for you for the matrix if that is useful for identification of different rules that you're sharing in there, but you do not have to do the color coding. And the rubric obviously describes in more detail exactly what's required for each section. So good luck on this. Let me know if you have any questions.